I'm going to show you guys the best sorceress lightning build in the entire game. This thing is insane. We get crazy AoE clear. We have crazy single target damage. We have good survivability. We have good mobility. This build is just amazing all around. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this, guys, and show you guys how you can also be a totally OP lightning sorceress or sorcerer in Diablo 4. Before this, we're going to need our abilities. We're going to need legendary affixes, aspects, enchanting items. We're going to need all sorts of different things in order to make this all come together. More than just that. So let's start with the skill tree. That's the easiest way to get through this. Arc Lash is your bread and butter. This does more damage than like anything in the game just about, at least for sorcerers. This one just does a crazy amount of damage. You're also going to, you want to max this out no matter what. You're going to want to upgrade it, and then you're going to want to upgrade it to Glinting Arc Lash, which makes it so when you hit a stunned enemy with it, it reduces your cooldown. That synergizes with it because every 10 times you swipe, it stuns all enemies it hits. So if you're AoE farming, then it'll make you get all your cooldowns back basically like instantly. It's crazy. Then for core skills, this is where I deviate from some other builds, is that I don't think any of these core skills are good. Now, people lose their actual minds over me not having Chain Lightning. I don't know. Chain Lightning just sucks ass, guys. Like, the only thing it's good for is when there's a boss and there's literally no one else. It's just you and the boss and no other enemies in the room. That's the only time. And if you're going to get Chain Lightning, you can. And we could swap out one of the abilities in this build for it potentially, which would be Blizzard. So it's either Blizzard or this. But Blizzard works way better, and I'll get to why that is in a the reasons for that in just a moment. So, yeah, we're going to skip all core skills. And no passives from these either. All these passives over here are not very good in my opinion. Okay. Defensive skills is where it's at. Now, we get Teleport. This is for a lot of reasons. One is survivability. The other is mobility and, like, just making the game so you can farm faster, you can move faster. Because ideally, you'll get to where you're so OP that you can sacrifice an ability for the mobility so that, A, you have survivability, but also so that you can get through the map faster and just farm the enemies faster. It literally makes you progress your game faster by a lot to have Teleport, in my opinion. And again, just survivability, consistency. And then the other thing that we want here is we're going to want Ice Armor and Frost Nova. And you can swap out Ice Armor with Flame Shield. We'll talk in a second. So because of that, let's go straight to Frost Nova. So Frost Nova, you're only going to get 1 point in it. If you get armor that gives you more ranks of Frost Nova, that's great. That'll be awesome. If not, it's fine. Because the only thing you get from upgrading is a cooldown reduction, which is very nice. But a big thing we bank on is we bank on it getting reset from other passives and also from our Arc Lash. So we're going to get that. We're going to get Enhanced Frost Nova so that killing enemies frozen by it will reduce its cooldown by up to 4 seconds. It helps get it back faster. And then the Mystical Frost Nova is what makes it OP. So freezing's cool and all, but bosses can't be frozen. But bosses can become vulnerable, and so can every enemy in the game, which allows us to combo this with weapon skills and things that we find on our items. And it's going to be totally crazy. When we get to the items, you'll see what I mean, what we're talking about here. But this one's nuts. Vulnerability is OP as hell in this game for a lot of reasons. So we get that. The main use of that is just to hit it and make everyone around you become vulnerable. Freezing's also nice, but it's mainly vulnerability. Now we have either Ice Armor or Flame Shield. Now here's the situation. So there's an aspect in this game that'll make you do more damage when you have a barrier active. And that's what this is really nice for. Also, while you're leveling, if you feel like you're too weak, this one will help you feel stronger so you can survive a little bit better while getting up close with Arc Lash. But if you feel like you're overpowered as hell and you don't need it, then it's better just get Flame Shield, because Flame Shield actually does way more damage than what it says it does. And you get a self-heal on it, so you don't have to pop potions as often. So that's an alternative. And the movement speed is really nice. But it, along with everything else we're going to do in this, the burst potential with Flame Shield is absolutely insane. But consistency-wise, I prefer Ice Armor in most situations just because it's just more consistent to stay alive with it. Then you're going to upgrade it. And the main reason is I don't care about this. Mana regeneration for this build is really not important. The main thing is the Mystical Ice Armor makes it so when you damage vulnerable enemies, you can get more barrier back. This ability gives you even more barrier from the damage you're doing. And that combos with Frost Nova. You're going to spam Frost Nova, and then you're going to use the shield, and then you're going to beat on things, and that'll keep your barrier up. As for the passives, we're going to get Glass Cannon, so we do more damage. Although if you feel like you're dying too easily, you could not get it. That's up to you. And then Elemental Attunement, we have a few points, and this was the last skill I bought in my tree, so I only got 2 points in it. Don't have an extra point for it, unfortunately. Then down here, we get Precision Magic, so our lucky hit chances increase. It's just a nice overall perk. And then we go down here to align the elements. We only get 1 point in this because we're just trying to get to this, which is protection, which makes it so using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier for 2 seconds. That is amazing for survivability when you have to get close range as a sorcerer, because sorcerers aren't really meant to get close range. So this makes you tanky enough to survive. So then every time you use an ability, you can absorb a bunch of damage, you can stay in their face, and you can keep spamming them with arc lightning or whatever it's called, arc lash. Okay, then we go down to this tree. This is where I get blizzard. I literally just get 1 point in blizzard. I don't care about the damage. It does do decent damage though, actually. But the main thing is it applies chill and it randomly freezes, even though I don't know how it freezes. It doesn't say it freezes people, but it just randomly freezes people. There's also aspects we can get for it that are nice. Those spikes coming out are really nice to make it a little bit more effective. So it's mainly just to freeze people and to chill them, which lets us get even more damage from our items, which again, we'll talk about in a moment. Then we get these passives. So we get static discharge, 3 points in it, which makes it so when we get a lucky hit and a critical strike in the same hit, we have 15% chance to form a crackling energy. I may even eventually swap this out to only have 1 point because crackling energy is not that important. But the main thing we want here is shocking impact. Every time you stun an enemy, you deal 641 lightning damage to them, which is huge because we're going to get something else also that gives stuns, but also arc lash gives stuns. So it gets kind of crazy. Then down here, we get 1 point permafrost just so we can get up to hoarfrost. And it makes it so we deal 9% increased damage to chilled enemies and 18% increased damage to frozen enemies, which is insane with Blizzard. It makes all our lightning skills do crazy amounts of damage to anyone who we put this Blizzard on. So that's why Blizzard synergizes well, but there's also even more than that, which we'll get to in a sec. Now, obviously in a lightning build, we're going unstable currents, but also unstable currents is just OP as hell in this build. It's not even about being lightning. It just makes it so the main thing from this is our attack speed goes up, but also the random casting of skills. It makes it so it casts a skill whenever we basic attack. So that's nuts for DPS. The DPS when we're using our ult is unbelievable. And then we get this, so our attack speed's increased by 25%. That was what made that 25%. It's not on there by default. We have to get that for that attack speed. And then we get this one is active. When it's active, crackling energy continually pulses and consumes no charges, which just during it helps it do even more damage. Then over here, we get all these passives. So hitting enemies with shock skills increases your critical strike chance by 3%. And resets upon getting a critical strike. This just makes us get more critical strikes more often, which then synergizes with this, which does lightning damage, plus also it's just nice to critical strike. Or no, actually, it doesn't synergize with that. Sorry, that's crit and that's stun. Doesn't synergize with that, but critical strikes are nice. And then this one, critical strikes with shock skills increase your movement speed by 9%. Not necessary, but it makes it nice to be able to reposition while swinging on people. That's why a movement speed is really good in this build. So that way we can take a swing and then move with, force move, in order to avoid damage while also being active on damage. It's just really nice for survivability while also doing this. And then convulsions. On a lucky hit, our shock skills have a 9% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds. And since we're AoE farming so hard, and we got that thing for lucky hit up here, we'll actually be stunning a decent amount with this, which then synergizes with this really well, increases our overall DPS. Then down here, we have Veer's Mastery. Close enemies take 10% increased damage from shock skills, and they deal 20% less damage to us. And anytime we critical strike, these bonuses go up by 25%, which synergizes with this critical strike thing. So basically, this will always be active when we're farming a bunch of enemies, and it's really nice for survivability. Without this, you're just going to pop like a balloon a lot of the times, especially at mid-level ranges when you're you're just getting to another world tier and you're kind of weakening a tier like that. So those are the skills. And now let's talk about the gear, because there's something about that. So the reason we want to get a lot of those things is there's all these different perks, or whatever you want to call them, on your gear that have huge effects on things. So we have this staff, for example, is amazing because it gives plus 23.4% damage to crowd controlled enemies. So when we stun them, or I think slow them too. And then we have 16.9% damage to chilled enemies. So all we do is do that. We do 16% more damage. 31% damage to close enemies, which is great because arc lash is our main damage. Then we have basic skill damage, which is the main thing that you want. You want basic skill damage whenever you can get it, and you also want attack speed whenever you can get it. I put a gem in here. I think it was a topaz. It gives basic skill damage, and you're just going to go for skill damage and attack speed, skill damage and attack speed. And if a piece of gear has anything that gives you any of these things that we proc, so chilled, damage to chilled enemies, damage to frozen enemies, damage to slowed enemies, damage to close enemies, basic skill damage, or just damage overall, any of those things will apply because of the way we built our skills. Because we have the ability with Blizzard to put on the chill and to freeze, it makes it so all these gears, it's way easier to find gear that will increase your damage then. And that's what really makes it insane about getting the frost skills mixed into this. And this one makes people vulnerable. So this one, you can also look for ones that increase damage to vulnerable enemies, which I don't know if I have any. Yeah, plus 11% vulnerable damage. So you can just combine all these things to get unbelievable amounts of damage, basically. So that's why we try to build this way, so that we can find more gear more easily. That'll give us what we want. End game, I guess we could swap it out for chain lightning when we're level 100. And after we've farmed gear for like 500 hours, we'll just have the exact perfect gear in the entire game. And then maybe it won't be as important. But it still is really nice to be able to chill and freeze them with Blizzard and slow them down and stuff. It makes it really nice for AoE farm. But we'll see at level 100 once I have perfect gear someday. But anyway, that is the reason we do all of that. So as for aspects, I don't have all the aspects yet that I want, but some that are really good. Like I said, attack speed. We have ones where when my core skills hit, I gain attack speed, which would be better for a chain lightning build. But also I have this thing over here where this is an insanely good one for this build. While unstable currents is not active, your shock skills have a 6% chance to trigger a free cast from it. What that does is make it so your arc lash has a 6% chance to just cast a random shock skill. And you could theoretically find one that's higher than 6%, I assume, since these imprints can be found at different, levels, basically. So, maybe you can find one with 10% or something like that. And then another good one is when Blizzard's cast, makes ice spikes pop up that do more damage. That's a good one. And then we also have this one right here. And this is the weakest one you can find. You can find one that's 5% or more. Taking direct damage has a chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills. This one is broken OP for this build, because then it lets you spam this one more often, because that's a defensive skill. And this, which makes you be able to stay alive longer, which is also insanely good. So that's a good one. This one's also really good because it just gives you a barrier every 30 seconds. And that one, if you can find one that gives a high enough barrier, I know there's ones higher than that. This one, for example, 1,724. I need to swap that out at some point at the occultist. But ones that give barrier are also insanely good like that. Now, there's one I don't have on here right now, but there's one that makes it so when you have a barrier active, you do extra damage. And this build makes you have barriers active very frequently, so that one's insane. Another one is when you stand still, you start doing more damage, up to like 25 or 30% more damage, something like that. That one can be good, but it's risky when you get to torment difficulty and stuff. But if you get to where you're really OP and you're just farming, then yeah, it makes it you stand still, you do more damage. That's also stack insanely well with everything that we're doing. So here's the one. Deal increased damage while barrier is active. That one's also unbelievably crazy. This one's also good. Gain increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 25%. That's also really nice if you make room for it in your aspects, just because the tankier you are in this build, the better, because it's really easy to just pop like a balloon when you're getting close to like, 50 enemies and like 3 of 6 elites at the same time. But the biggest thing with this build is don't forget that the teleport will cancel out any CC on you. So if you ever get stunned, if you ever get frozen, if you ever get any type of CC, you can just cancel it with teleport, and that is the most helpful thing with teleport. But again, also just for leveling, for farming, for everything, teleport's insanely good because you can move such long distances with it. You can get out of traps like that, and you can easily move around and reposition and get wherever you need to be. It's just really good to keep yourself in a good position for good damage. But yeah, once you have all this stuff, then you'll be able to farm the hell out of enemies with this build. And the more stuff that you get that stacks with it, all the stuff I told you about. So there was the things that increase your damage versus vulnerable enemies, things that increase your damage versus slowed enemies, things that increase your damage versus frozen enemies, just all that stuff. The more things like that that you get, the more damage that you'll be able to do. So hopefully this video helped you out, guys. This is, in my opinion, like the best way to build a lightning sorcerer. And like I said, later on, once you're level 100 and you have perfect gear, you could swap out Blizzard for chain lightning. But in my opinion, on the lower levels and mid levels, chain lightning kind of sucks. The only thing it's good for really is this scenario right here where I have to clean up the ads who are ranged and they just jump away from me. That's like really the only thing it's super good for. But the damage on it is not nearly as good as people make it out to be. I've tried it a million times, and its damage just honestly sucks compared to just spamming this on them and using Blizzard and chaining all the things and getting all these things to combine the damage and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's it, guys. Hopefully this video helped you out. Hopefully now you have a better idea how to build your lightning sorceress to be super OP in Diablo 4.